I have this really weird obsession with playing Dragon Ball Z games. I want to play them all. The great ones. The good ones. The hidden gems. The ones based on OG Dragon Ball. And even the ones based on GT. But if I'm gonna be obsessed, then that means I need to play every single Dragon Ball Z game. Including the bad ones. There's been a handful already, and I grew up on a lot of them. But one stands above them all and takes the crown as the worst Dragon Ball Z game of all time. Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu. Let's talk about it. I hate you. My name is Josue, welcome to the Panic Brothers channel, and let's unfortunately get into it. Yeah, unfortunately. Roll the intro. The early to mid 2000s weren't really a great time for Dragon Ball Z games. For every Budokai game we got, we received the Legacy of Goku 1 in return. Speaking of Legacy of Goku, that series of games was developed by Webfoot Technologies. I tried to get some more information on Webfoot from their website, which despite not having made a video game since 2014 for the Nintendo 3DS, they seemingly still have a website up online where they call themselves one of the most experienced game developers in the industry. Now, I don't want to knock on being a video game developer since that's clearly not a skill that I have. I mean, I'm just a YouTuber. But I find it pretty hard to believe that Webfoot is still considered one of the best video game developers in the industry today, considering they haven't put out a video game since The Legend of Korra for the 3DS in almost a decade, mind you. And on their Twitter bio, they consider their magnum opus to be 3D Frog Frenzy. Now, I never heard of 3D Frog Frenzy, but I'm sure it made waves when it came out. Not to mention their last couple of tweets are all about their NFT profile, where the one NFT they've ever made is still on sale, despite it having been over a year since it came out. So if we take another look-see at the Webfoot Technologies homepage, we can see a list of the games they've helped develop, including our favorite, the one and only, Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu. I know this is a small gripe, but I hate that Dragon Ball is spelled as one word for Taiketsu and the Legacy of Goku games, while the GT game weirdly has the correct spacing, but whatever, that's just me being nitpicky. If we take a look at that Taiketsu page on their website, they describe the game as unleash devastating combos and super moves alone or against friends in huge multiplayer battles. The gauntlet has been thrown down, the challenge issued. Can you fight your way to the top? Now, if you somehow consider cheesing your way through opponents with one single leg sweep as a challenge, then yeah, the gauntlet has certainly been thrown down. Features of the game include playing as one of the 15 greatest warriors from the Dragon Ball Z universe, including the mighty Broly. Yeah, a lot of the advertising around this game was focused on how this is the first time you're being able to play as Broly in any Dragon Ball Z game. Now, technically speaking, Broly was actually playable for the first time ever in Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden 2 for the SNES, but that never came out in America, except for that really weird Extreme Butoden pre-order situation. I know about that, don't worry. You can't get that though now, so yeah, that theoretically makes Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu theoretically the first time American audiences ever got to play as Broly. But you may think to yourself, isn't that a weird thing to market? Like, why advertise the game that way? Who cares that much that this is the first time that Broly is playable in a game? I mean, it's not like Super Dragon Ball Z was advertising itself like crazy that this is the first time Chi-Chi was playable in a game. People weren't going nuts going to GameStop to pick that up. So why was Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu doing it so hard? Somehow it worked. Weirdly enough though, that marketing worked on me. My 7-year-old ass could not fathom that Broly was finally playable in a game. So my mom took me to GameStop, I picked up Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu, and wow, it sucks. You know how when you're 7 years old and you somehow seem to think that things are much better than they actually are? Like, even if a video game is horrible, you keep on playing it and think it's actually pretty good even when it objectively isn't? Yeah, even my 7-year-old self knew that Taiketsu was really bad. And when replaying the game in order to make this video, I couldn't do it. Webfoot was commissioned to make Legacy of Goku 1, another game that my 7-year-old self also knew was objectively bad. Literally one of the worst video games ever made. Yet somehow it made enough sales to justify a sequel, which many consider to be one of the best Dragon Ball Z games ever made. So you would think that Webfoot somehow turned things around and learned how to make a proper video game? But no. If you want an example of just how lazy Webfoot was in developing this game, they literally just reused the same title music from Legacy of Goku 2. And speaking of music, we have around 9 tracks in the game that are all terrible. Graphics that look just like every other Game Boy Advance game whenever they attempt to do 3D graphics, which just means it looks terrible. 15 characters that all play terribly. I guess the word of the day is terrible. The poses for each character look so off. There's something about the way Vegeta stands that rubs me the wrong way. Gameplay is extremely sluggish, and as I mentioned before, you can typically cheese your way out of every single fight. The modes include Tournament, Endurance, Time Challenge, Sparring, which is just a training mode. Endurance mode is just fighting as many fights as possible without your health restoring. There's no reward in this. You get nothing from doing it. There's nothing. It's just fighting just to fight. If you want rewards, the only thing you can do is either Time Challenge or Tournament. They're both essentially the equivalent of an arcade mode, except in Time Challenge, you're timed. Obviously. You fight 7 random characters, and at the end, you may or may not unlock a new character. You usually get Raditz first, and then you get Nappa after beating the mode with Vegeta, and you go on and on and on until eventually you unlock Broly. Once you unlock the characters, there's really no reason to return to this game. There's no replayability here. Now you would think there would be a story mode or something to at least give something else to do, but there just isn't. And with only 15 playable characters, there really wouldn't be much of a story mode anyways. Many characters are missing, especially characters from the Frieza Saga. With no Ginyu Force, or Dodoria, or Zarbon, you would pretty much just go immediately straight into fighting Frieza, which wouldn't really be much of an accurate story mode if you ask me. And with only Majin Buu and no Super Buu or Kid Buu, then how would the game even end properly? Funny enough, Super Buu is on the cover of the game, but he isn't in the roster. Why advertise a character if he isn't present in the game? Make it make sense. At that point, isn't that just false advertising? Now, I'd really love to suggest people to try out games for themselves, like Dragon Ball Z Sagas, right? Objectively, that's a really terrible game, but I think there's something there. Like, there's something that I think maybe a small niche of people could get something out of that game. But here, Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu? No. There's nothing. There's nothing here to take. There's nothing here. There's nothing to enjoy. This game is terrible purely because Webfoot gave this game zero love, zero reason to play, aside from, oh, this is the first time we get to play as Broly in America, wow! The funny thing is, you don't even get to play as Broly in his legendary Super Saiyan form, which is half the reason why people even love him to begin with. It's only in his base Super Saiyan form, which, who cares? Don't play this game, ever, just don't. If you ever wonder why Webfoot Technologies isn't around, it's probably because they put this game out in the universe and had the audacity to sell this for money. It's widely speculated that this was just another game that was rushly made in order to make it in time for the holidays, which is the only reasonable excuse I can imagine for this. But this game was so awful that it never made it to Japan. Now, granted, none of Webfoot Technologies' games made it to Japan, except for Legacy of Goku 2, which should say something. I have nothing left to say about this game. My name is Josue, and please come back when we talk about the 2 Dragon Ball GT games that exist in the universe. And one of them is also made by Webfoot Technologies. How great!